Hello, I'm Pastor David Smith of In God's Hands Ministries in Due West, South Carolina, and I would like to take a very brief moment of your time to share a thought with you, coming from Zephaniah, the third chapter. And the thought is simply this: captivity or restoration. In the book of Zephaniah, the third chapter, Zephaniah is prophesying about the restoration of God's people, or at least the restoration of a remnant of God's people. It deals with the entire nation going through captivity, dealing with oppression and such not, but the restoration that God promised coming to pass. The question is it for the entire body or just a remnant? And my belief is really for the remnant. And the reason I say that is because that when we go through something, for instance, we're still dealing with the coronavirus. All of us are going through the same thing. We're in the same boat, heading the same direction. Everything we are experiencing together, even with principles in place as far as restrictions and social distancing thing. We're all dealing with it together, such as was the case with the children of Israel and their captivity. All of them were in it together. Whether they believed God or did not believe on God, they were all in it together, such as we are today. I want to bring your attention to the understanding that even in the midst of this, and a few weeks ago, I talked about God's houses being closed. Even in the midst of this, and even as the country begins to reopen, many of God's houses are still closed, and many pulpits are still empty. And yet you have places such as tattoo parlors that are opening up their doors and painting yet once again on the skins of people. And yet pulpits remain empty. My beloved, there is a problem when God's people voluntarily close the doors in such a time when we need to come together more than any time else. In such a time when prayer is ever so needed, and yet we do not offer it. There is a problem, my beloved. And I want to caution you, because the media now is saying that social distancing is becoming the new norm. Be very careful, be very mindful of accepting distance as a normality. We have to understand that God calls us to be separate from the world, but not separate from each other. In fact, God even tells us that where two or three are gathered in his name, that he will be in the midst. And yet we fail at the two or three. There is a problem, my beloved, when God's people are not showing God's promise. So my question to you today, right here, right now, is: are you part of the captivity or are you part of the restoration? My beloved, gain wisdom, for wisdom is the principal thing, but in all thy getting, get understanding. I'm Pastor David Smith of In God's Hands Ministries, wishing you and yours the very best that God desires to give.